Hi everyone, today we got that nice continuation off of the rally on Friday. Continues to be bullish here, as we kind of suspected that it was. We were bullish going into the day, and that made sense. Getting very close to all-time highs, close to this trend structure up here around 647, but we came up just short. Did get through this kind of highly traded zone above this kind of consolidation high here, but do new record highs make sense? Let's take a look at all of the charts and see what makes sense for tomorrow. Do me a quick favor and like and subscribe and watch the video till the end to help out the channel, and let's get started. In news today, we got a good report on strong sales of iPhone 17s from the US and China, and this was massive for Apple. Apple broke out here today. There's been long concerns that the iPhone 17 was going to be kind of pushed out, or potentially that China was going to move away from it and it wouldn't become the most prevalent smartphone, and that was very, very concerning, right? We were not seeing iPhone sales growth. They were not taking any market share away from anybody, and they were potentially losing market share to these other companies, especially in China. But now the iPhone 17, they say, is very compelling to consumers, offering great value for money, which I don't know if that's true, but it is a better chip, higher base of storage, better selfie camera upgrade for all versus the iPhone 16. People are buying the device and calling it a no-brainer. And then they did get an upgrade here to $315 a share from $226. I think that's a little bit optimistic. $315 does sound quite high. Right now it's sitting around $263 or so. We'll look at it on the charts later, of course. And the big question is, does Apple actually get any form of AI into this phone? Maybe the next phone, are they going to have an AI model of any kind? If they did, that would be super bullish, but for right now, this is a massive part of their business, and we got good reports, and that pushed Apple to all-time highs. Also in news, I wanted to highlight the US-Australia critical minerals deal. This was kind of a big talk out of China previously, where they are restricting rare earth metals, rare earth materials, but now we have a new deal with Australia, $8.5 billion project pipeline. Doesn't sound like a ton of money, but I'm sure this is kind of the initial stages here. And we are continuing to make deals with our partners, and I think this is super positive. And it gives us kind of an alternate to China, right? It puts pressure on China, like, hey, maybe we're going to find these minerals other places. You don't own everything. And they say here, critical materials, rare earths. That is very much the concern. Can China kind of turn off the rest of the world in the supply of these rare earths? And we're trying to signal to them that that's potentially not the case. So it's good. Pentagon investment in Australia, lots of money investing in Australia to try to get these rare earths back into our economy. And that's what they highlight here. Tensions over rare earths earlier this month. I think this kind of puts the pressure on China a little bit more. Moving over to fear and greed, we ended up at a 30 from a 26, little bit of a push up there, bullish for markets is what we got. Momentum back into neutral. Strength has been doing really well, but still in neutral here. Breadth, slight tick up. We'll take a look at that later for sure, but still in extreme fear. Put call ratio continues to elevate even with the move here today, continues to go higher. Put call ratio still in extreme fear. Volatility still neutral, coming down just a little bit more. Talked about how this spike on the Thursday last week was pretty high on volatility. It was enough to kind of peak out in the short term. Still expecting continuation eventually, but I think we'll probably get a spike, a little bit of consolidation, and then another spike here ultimately. Safe haven demand moving a little higher, still right around that zero zone. Still extreme fear on both of the bond metrics. Moving over to earnings, we have Netflix tomorrow, GE Aerospace, Coca-Cola, and then I want to see some of the staples here, 3M, and then also you have General Motors. How is the auto industry doing for Wednesday? You have Tesla, IBM, Thermo Fisher, AT&T, lots of companies here on Thursday. I was reading earlier that about a fifth of the S&P 500 companies are coming out this week. So not a ton of huge companies. You still have Tesla and Netflix, of course, which are huge, but there is a big volume of companies as well coming out this week. Moving over to the economic calendar, nothing for today. For tomorrow, you have basically nothing either. Not a whole lot of data this week at all. Hopefully we get continuing and initial jobless claims on Thursday. That would be interesting, but of course, the government shutdown continues to be kind of locked up. 20-year bond auction on Wednesday, continuing to kind of watch those with my TLT position, but overall, not a ton of data this week. Moving over to the charts, looking at the S&Ps here, you can see that big continuation. You kind of have overhead resistance in here. You could argue maybe in here, but I'm watching the trend line over here around 674.50 or so. On the daily chart, we're kind of above it again. You can see that drifting a little bit higher on the after hours, but you're still looking at that all-time high going back to Thursday the 9th. That's right around that kind of 674 area. If we can get through there, then you're at all-time highs, of course, and then you got to start to look at this next trend structure up around kind of 685 area. Momentum step back to bullish. RSI still very much concerned about this, right? We still could see that kind of breakdown retest of the SMA, and the bigger breakdown still very much divergence. If you look at that here, obviously very similar price action. RSI here was about a 70, very overbought conditions. Now we're at a much lower RSI to 59.12, and we're very similar price action here. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Definitely some divergence going on there, but structurally still looks very bullish. Want to see what happens at that next peak area. Moving over to the Tasty charts here, I want to highlight that we did push through that trailing stop on the 4-hour chart. That was 667.50 right here going into that Friday session, and then we pushed through that back into bullish conditions here. So now you have a little bit of mixed conditions, right? So you have bullish back to bearish back to bullish. Looks like consolidation. Been talking about that on the hourly chart, but right now your trailing stop is bullish at 661.45 down here. So if you did pull back, you'd want to see a higher low off of this structure here, and then potentially this zone of EMAs in here, and then get that bigger push to the upside. That would be super bullish. But looking at the hourly chart, of course, we are certainly overbought already. You can see how extended we were pretty much immediately getting into that overbought condition above the upper ATR band. 8 EMA drifting towards that upper ATR band as well. That is at 670.99, 671 or so, and then the upper band just behind it there, 671.69, current price 671.28. So we're just barely below it. After hours, we did drift above it, but right now, probably going to slow down a little bit. Going to start to drift to the upside if we can continue this trend structure. Moving over to the NASDAQ, very, very similar thesis, except the NASDAQ did go right back to its all-time high. You can see I'm watching this zone in here right at the all-time highs, going back to Wednesday, Thursday, and then tagged it on the Friday before the big sell. And we are there once again, right in this zone, right between kind of 611.70 and then my upper alert here right at the high 613.20. And then you can see it here on the daily chart. Gap and rally looks very, very strong, up 1.26%. Momentum swinging back to bullish, but again, you have that same story here on the RSI, right? We're right at the SMA. Is it going to touch that and reject? Very, very different here on the RSI compared to where we were at this previous high here. So same price action, almost identical, much lower RSI, very, very clear divergence. Not a ton of volume to confirm it in here, but if we get the breakthrough, everything's fine. If we get the rejection on this critical area, that is going to be a dumpster fire. Moving over to the Tasty charts, again, very similar thesis. This is the hourly chart to start here. You can see we pushed to that upper ATR band, pulled back to the 8 EMA area, and then started to hold support in there. Basically the same as the SPY chart, still very much bullish conditions on the hourly chart. That continues to be true here. Trailing stop 607.87, current 9 EMA 611.35, upper ATR band in there 612.83. So pretty tight range here, needs to hold for that bullish condition. Finally got back above this buy that I had from forever ago. Held it through here, continues to be in good position. And then looking at the 4-hour chart, also getting back into bullish conditions here. Pushed through that trailing stop at 607.50 or so, got through that area, got to the second ATR band, want to see it push towards that upper band right now. That is at 617.64. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow. The Russell pushed up to that trend line once again, stopped right at it, almost to the penny, arguably to the penny right here. Momentum stepping back to bullish. RSI continues to kind of drift lower here, but we're right at it. If we push through, that's bullish. Of course, we did get above it here, gapped up, dojied, and then gave it all back. So this has been a clear point of resistance over the last couple of weeks, right? Tagged it here, pulled back, tagged it here, pulled back, got above it briefly, pulled back. Can we get above it and hold for any length of time? That is what we are waiting to see from the Russell. Can it do it? Hopefully it can. I am bullish on the Russell here, hoping that it does. And then the Dow, similar structure to everything else, at least the SPY chart here. Nice continuation off of the bounce off the trend line, momentum back to bullish. RSI above the SMA here, a little bit more bullish, getting above there, but not quite at this high. It'll probably push towards that high, and then we'll see if we get kind of a double topping pattern. Are we just going to continue to consolidate while this 55 catches up? That is the concern that we talked about this weekend. Moving over to the Mag 7 here, this is starting to look a little bit more bull flaggy, which is interesting, right? You have kind of this small choppy consolidation, and I went ahead and drew it on there for you so you can kind of see what I'm looking at. It does look a little bit bull flaggy, definitely choppy, a lot more choppy and a lot tighter range than you would typically see on kind of a more traditional bull flag. But if this is a bull flag and then we got got a gap to this level and then pushed. Maybe this is looking for a bigger continuation here, kind of that culmination style move, which obviously would be super bullish. We looked at this on Google, and now you had the run on Apple. We'll of course take a look at those, but this is interesting here. Is this a breakout on the Mag 7? Moving over to Apple and Microsoft here, you got Apple breaking out like we talked about, right in that 262 area. It was a little bit higher earlier in the session, 264.50 or so was the high, 264.38, but clean break through this consolidation high here, clean break through the high back here in December of last year, and now in October of this year, we are starting to break out to new all-time highs on Apple. Momentum swinging to bullish, RSI swinging to bullish, big volume on the session. Everything says this should go a little bit higher here on Apple. Your trailing stop, or your stop, at least for now, would be 260.10. If it gets back below that, or this trend structure in here, then very much concerning. But for now, Apple looks strong. Remember, the price target they put out was about $315. I don't think that's going to happen, at least in the near term, but it's certainly possible it happens at some point. And then looking at Microsoft, positive on the day, 0.63, held this support area here, pushed up. That's a kind of confirmation candle to the upside right to this trend line here, kind of a low, maybe higher low setup in here. Want to see it get above the trend line and push to here if it's going to do it. Otherwise, I'm still kind of looking at this as consolidation with a high, low, higher low. So you're basically going to get sideways choppy pretty much in this range, in my opinion. Moving over to Tesla and NVIDIA. Tesla looks really, really nice, up 1.85%. We said this looks strong, broke out here, got back to the level, held the level, continuation up, back above all the MAs on Friday, continuation candle today. This looks really strong. Still looking for this kind of 480 to 500 area as kind of that price target. That would take you back to the all-time highs around that 484 area. Looks really, really good. Momentum bullish. RSI, it's kind of right at that SMA rate. Is this going to be a problem for Tesla? We'll find out. It is technically above it in the short term, so be watching that one. Looks interesting for sure. And then looking at NVIDIA, this has kind of been dead in the water. You have a failed breakout here. Very, very concerning. And then we came back into the zone and we're still stuck between the 180 and 184 area. Still cannot get above it. Tried to, failed. We're in the middle of the range. Momentum's kind of neutral. RSI is kind of neutral. Almost looks like a rising wedge at this point. Kind of failed breakout, pull back, higher lows, very slightly higher highs, but it seems to be fading in that kind of momentum. So for now, I'm kind of staying away from NVIDIA. I was long here for a second, got the failed breakout. I would be careful here. Moving over to Alphabet and Meta here. Meta did get above this trend line. It's not a super clean bull flag on Meta, but you had this kind of bull flag type setup, higher low setup with a base kind of off of that trend line, kind of a breakout here. It's not super clean, but you could kind of argue really wouldn't do anything until we're above 736. Want to see it get above there and kind of push if it's going to do it. But really the better setup is Alphabet at this point. This is a pretty clean bull flag on the other hand. Kind of breakout, retest, continuation, everything looks clean here. Continues to go today, 1.27%. This is all-time highs for Alphabet. I would expect this to get a stronger continuation. So you got Apple running, got Tesla running, got Alphabet kind of running. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples hit that next level, 79.90, and then sold off just a little bit from that area. You can see that here. Hit the target. Really want to see it get through these EMAs. Really want to see it push back towards these highs. I think my initial target was kind of 81.18 to 81.85. Kind of in the middle of this range is probably where we're going to go, at least on the first push. I still believe that's going to happen. Momentum still bullish. Plenty of room on the RSI. Still looks very, very clean, even though we got a slight rejection from that level. And then discretionaries. Got back above the level here, 235.85 was the level, closed above it, so you like to see that, drifting higher after hours, 21 EMA and VWAP, could be major overhead resistance, and we are basically right there. Right now that is 236.88. Do we hit that level and then reject back below this 235.85 level? If we do, we get like a close above it, hit the level, reject. That's going to be very, very concerning, right? So watch this on discretionaries, key zone in here. The momentum is okay, the RSI is okay, but this could be major overhead resistance. Moving over to 20 and 50-day breadth. Breadth actually had a nice push here, so gapped and rallied back above the 50 level on 20-day breadth. Same kind of move on 50-day. On 20-day breadth, 50-day breath, similar, gapped and rallied, didn't get above the 50 line there. Didn't get above that 52.81 resistance area, but it is right at the 50 line. Momentum stepping back to bullish, RSI stepping back to bullish. You have a nice kind of higher low setup on both of those. Do we get a nice continuation kind of back into this 68 to 70 area? That's going to be very interesting to watch here. Structurally, of course, no changes at all. Still very much bearish, but watching this bounce here, it does seem to have a little bit of legs. Moving over to the dollar did find a little bit more continuation here. You can see the bounce on the Friday, a little bit more grinding price action to the upside here. Not everything I wanted it to be, right? But we came off the 21, came off the 55 on Friday, got a slight continuation higher here. Concern, of course, is the RSI. It's kind of similar to everything else. Breakdown, do we kind of reject from here and go lower? Or are we going to be able to get back above this and continue to the highs that I think we're going to get? Still bullish dollar, just kind of being patient here, waiting for this to go where I think it's going to go. Moving over to bonds. Bonds looked good here, as you would suspect. Both of these up on the day. JNK up about a quarter, right to the 21, right to VWAP. Momentum back to bullish, RSI back to bullish. Decent volume here. Of course, we still have to see, like, is this a double top? Is this a lower high setup? Is this going to push through to new highs? And this is going to be kind of a new trend structure potentially. Those are all the things you have to be concerned about, but in the very short term, definitely looks bullish. And then looking at TLT, we've been bullish on this for a very, very long time. We said this was a long-term base in here for basically a year. Said the base in here, January of 25, arguably all the way back here, October of 23, and we are still here, October of 25. Very, very long accumulation, consolidation, and now we are starting to break out back above this consolidation here. Clean breakout there. Nice resistance becomes support area, and then we pushed back to the bull side, looking for that 92.82 area. And ultimately, I believe this is going to go back into the kind of 100 to 102 area, back in this zone here before we see any kind of major rejection. So bullish on TLT continues to be very much intact. Moving over to the VIX, you can see nice continuation lower here, but we're getting very close to those zones of support. 21 EMA right there, 1789. It is below my level, 1850. We'll see if that matters or not. It's going to touch this area. We'll see if that matters or not. Momentum still selling, RSI below the SMA. I still believe this is going to be a series of issues when it comes to the volatility going higher. I still believe it. I still believe that, and we've been talking about it forever. Still think we're going to get like a spike, maybe a little consolidation, ultimately getting a bigger spike in the not too distant future. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. But in the short term, this does look a little bearish, and I think this will probably come down a little bit more. Moving over to my accounts, I did not a whole lot here. I did roll out this Russell position because we did break through that kind of max profit price. So I rolled out here to the end of the week for 246 for $4 credit. So that puts max profit kind of 250-ish, a little bit above 250-ish, gives me a little bit of room. I paid just a small debit for that. So try to get a little bit more credit out of it. I think the Russell is going to be in good shape. And even if it's not, I'm still $2 in the money for $4 credit. So I'll let that money come in, and then we'll see what happens after that. And then looking at the Qs, didn't do anything with it, still 600. It's pretty much right at my max profit price. You can see 611.55. Max profit price is 611.42. So I was right at it. No need to do anything in the short term. If it continues to be a rocket ship tomorrow, I can roll out to the end of the week and then see what happens after that. And then looking at TLT, nice move, continues to be bullish, continue to hold that bullish. And then for the dollar, no changes there, basically in the same position it's been in. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Apple's iPhone sales. Is it going to push it to 315? Is that possible for Apple? I think they're going to have to come out with something AI related for that to happen, but it's not impossible. And then what about the rare earths metals? What will that do to China and that potential deal? Let me know. Otherwise, like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video. Make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.